A young Cleopatra rises to power in a collapsing Egypt. Surrounded by enemies, she uses intelligence and diplomacy to protect her kingdom while forming legendary alliances with Julius Caesar and Mark Antony. In the heart of the 1st century BC, the once mighty kingdom of Egypt teetered on the brink of collapse. Its Ptolemaic dynasty, a lineage of Greek rulers established by one of Alexander the Great's generals, was decaying from within, plagued by sibling rivalries, political assassinations, and the economic instability. The sprawling city of Alexandria, a beacon of learning and culture, was a viper's nest of intrigue. Into this turbulent world, a woman of extraordinary intellect, ambition, and charisma would emerge, destined to become the last and the most famous of all the pharaohs. Her name was Cleopatra ketujuh Philopator, and her story is one of survival, power, and a desperate, brilliant struggle to preserve her nation's sovereignty against the encroaching shadow of Rome. Cleopatra ascended to the throne at the tender age of 18, not as a sole ruler, but as a co-regent with her much younger brother, Ptolemy XIII. This arrangement, dictated by their father's will and the Egyptian tradition, was a political powder keg from its inception. The court was divided, with powerful eunuchs and the advisors, like Pothinus, manipulating the boy king and viewing Cleopatra as a threat to their influence. They saw a young woman, but they underestimated the mind behind the crown. Cleopatra was no more mere figurehead. Exceptionally educated at the Museum of Alexandria, she was fluent in at least 9 languages, a feat unheard of for her Ptolemaic predecessors who rarely bothered to learn the native Egyptian tongue. She was a keen student of mathematics, philosophy, and astronomy, but her true genius lay in the art of politics and statecraft. Sensing the shifting loyalties within the palace, Cleopatra understood that to rule, she needed the support of the Egyptian people. She embraced her role as pharaoh in a way her family had not, participating in Egyptian religious ceremonies and presenting herself as the reincarnation of the goddess Isis. This was a masterful act of political theater, forging a bond with her subjects that transcended her Greek heritage. However, her growing popularity only deepened the resentment of her brother's faction. They saw her not as a divine ruler, but as an obstacle to be removed. Within 3 years of their joint reign, the court conspiracy succeeded. Cleopatra was driven from Alexandria, forced into exile in Syria, a queen without a kingdom. But for a woman of her resourcefulness, exile was not an end. It was an opportunity to regroup and plan her return. While Cleopatra gathered a mercenary army on Egypt's eastern border, a far greater power was making its presence felt in the Mediterranean. The Roman Republic, itself racked by civil war, had become the ultimate arbiter of international disputes. The conflict between 2 of its most powerful men, Julius Caesar and Pompey the Great, spilled onto Egyptian shores. After a devastating defeat at the Battle of Pharsalus, Pompey fled to Egypt, seeking refuge. It was a fatal miscalculation. The advisors to the young Ptolemy XIII, hoping to carry favor with the victorious Caesar, had Pompey assassinated as he stepped ashore. They presented his severed head to Caesar upon his arrival in Alexandria, a gruesome gift they believed would secure his gratitude. They were wrong. Caesar was disgusted by the treacherous murder of a Roman consul and his former son-in-law. He seized the opportunity to settle the Egyptian succession crisis, occupying the royal palace and summoning both Cleopatra and her brother to appear before him. This was the moment Cleopatra had been waiting for. Smuggled past her brother's blockades and into the heart of the occupied palace, she orchestrated one of history's most famous entrances. According to the historian Plutarch, she was delivered to Caesar rolled up inside a carpet, or perhaps a more plausible linen sack. When unfurled, she appeared before the 52-year-old Roman general, not as a defeated exile, but as a bold and determined queen demanding her throne. Caesar was captivated. He was not just swayed by her legendary charm, but impressed by her courage, her sharp intellect, and her articulate arguments. He saw in her a capable and reliable ally who could stabilize Egypt, ensuring the uninterrupted flow of grain to Rome, a resource of vital strategic importance. The meeting sparked not only a political alliance but also a personal one. Caesar overruled Ptolemy's faction and, citing their father's will, declared that Cleopatra and her brother would rule jointly as he had originally intended. The decision plunged Alexandria into war. The forces loyal to Ptolemy XIII laid siege to the royal palace, trapping Caesar and Cleopatra inside. The ensuing Alexandrian War was a brutal and desperate conflict, culminating in the Battle of the Nile. With the arrival of Roman reinforcements, Caesar's forces crushed the Egyptian army. Ptolemy XIII, attempting to flee, drowned in the Nile River, his golden armor weighing him down. With her primary rival gone, Cleopatra's power was solidified. Caesar installed her as the sole ruler of Egypt, with another younger brother, Ptolemy XIV, as her nominal co-regent. But the true power now rested firmly in her hands, guaranteed by the might of Rome and her intimate connection to its most powerful man. The alliance was cemented by the birth of their son, Ptolemy Caesar, nicknamed Caesarion, or Little Caesar. For Cleopatra, he was the heir who could one day unite the legacies of Egypt and Rome. To showcase her restored authority and her Roman connection, she took a triumphant journey up the Nile with Caesar, a lavish procession that displayed her wealth and power to her people. She later followed Caesar to Rome, where she lived in one of his private villas. Her presence caused a scandal in the conservative Roman society, but it was also a statement of her status as a recognized and powerful foreign monarch. She was more than a mistress. She was a political partner. However, her ambitions and Caesar's apparent monarchical aspirations fueled the fears of the Roman Senate. On the Ides of March 44 BC, Julius Caesar was assassinated by a group of senators, leaving Cleopatra and her son in a perilous position. The death of her protector threw Cleopatra's world into turmoil once more. With Rome engulfed in another civil war, she quickly returned to Egypt. The political landscape had shifted dramatically. Caesar's assassins, led by Brutus and Cassius, vied for control against his loyalists, led by his right-hand man, Mark Antony, and his adopted son, Octavian. Cleopatra played a cautious game, navigating the treacherous new political currents. After the defeat of the assassins at the Battle of Philippi, the Roman world was carved up between Antony and Octavian. Antony took control of the eastern provinces, which included the client kingdom of Egypt. It was inevitable that their paths would cross. In 41 BC, Mark Antony summoned Cleopatra to Tarsus, in modern-day Turkey, to answer for her ambiguous role during the recent civil war. She knew this was not a summons to be taken lightly. It was a test of her loyalty and a measure of her worth as an ally. Instead of arriving as a supplicant, Cleopatra staged a magnificent spectacle. She sailed up the river Cydnus in a golden barge with purple sails and silver oars, dressed as the goddess Venus, surrounded by attendants. The display was a calculated masterpiece of propaganda, designed to overwhelm the senses and appeal to Antony, a man known for his love of opulence and grandeur. Antony, who saw himself as the embodiment of the god Dionysus, was utterly enchanted. Just as with Caesar, a political alliance quickly blossomed into a passionate and enduring love affair. The partnership was one of both personal affection and strategic advantage. For Antony, Cleopatra provided immense wealth to fund his military campaigns, particularly his planned invasion of the Parthian Empire. For Cleopatra, Antony was the new Roman protector who could safeguard her throne and her kingdom. He recognized her as the rightful ruler of Egypt and acknowledged her children, including the twins Alexander Helias and Cleopatra Selene and a younger son, Ptolemy Philadelphus, all fathered by him. In an audacious political ceremony known as the Donations of Alexandria, Antony distributed vast territory in the east to Cleopatra and the children, proclaiming Caesarion as Caesar's true son and the heir and Cleopatra as Queen of Kings. This act was a direct challenge to his rival in Rome, Octavian. Octavian, a master of propaganda, seized upon the donations and Antony's relationship with the foreign queen to paint him as a traitor to Rome, a man bewitched and controlled by an ambitious eastern sorceress who sought to rule the republic from Alexandria. He skillfully turned Roman public opinion against Antony, portraying the coming conflict not as a Roman civil war, but as a defense of Roman values against a decadent and dangerous foreign threat. The final confrontation was set. The war culminated in the naval battle of Actium in 31 BC. The fleets of Antony and Cleopatra faced the smaller, more agile ships of Octavian, commanded by his brilliant general, Marcus Agrippa. The battle was a disaster for Antony and Cleopatra. Faced with certain defeat, they broke through the enemy line and fled back to Egypt, abandoning the majority of their fleet. Their army, left without a commander, surrendered soon after. The end was near. As Octavian's legions advanced on Alexandria the following year, Antony, receiving a false report of Cleopatra's death, fell on his sword. Mortally wounded, he was brought to the mausoleum where Cleopatra had barricaded herself, and he died in her arms. With her army defeated and her great love lost, Cleopatra was taken prisoner by Octavian. He intended to parade her through the streets of Rome in his triumph, a living trophy symbolizing his victory and the conquest of Egypt. But Cleopatra would not suffer such a humiliation. She had lived her life as a queen, and she would die as one. According to the traditional count, she had the NSP, a symbol of divine royalty in Egypt, smuggled to her in a basket of figs. Through its venomous bite, she took her own life, choosing a death befitting a pharaoh, a descendant of the goddess Isis. With her death, the Ptolemaic dynasty ended after nearly 3 centuries. Egypt was annexed as a province of the Roman Empire, its vast wealth now flowing directly to Octavian, who would soon become Augustus, the first Roman emperor. Cleopatra's dream of a resurgent Egyptian kingdom, intertwined with Rome but independent, died with her. Her story, however, has echoed through the ages, a timeless saga of a brilliant woman who dared to challenge the greatest power of her time. She was a scholar, a politician, a mother, and a commander who used every tool at her disposal: her intellect, her wealth, her charm, and her alliances with 2 of the most powerful men in history in a relentless fight for her throne and her people. A young Cleopatra rises to power in a collapsing Egypt. Surrounded by enemies, she uses intelligence and diplomacy to protect her kingdom while forming legendary alliances with Julius Caesar and Mark Antony.